Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on our YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, joining you from the van. I am now in Denver, Colorado. Ann and I are here to go see the Buffalo Bill-Denver Bronco game tomorrow, which we're really excited about. Got reservations to go to John Elway's Steakhouse tonight. Very excited about that. And I'm joined here today, of course, by our technical producer, Jonathan Voico.
Hey, you know what day it is.
Of course it is. We're also joined by writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett.
It's Rebecca Black Day. It's Friday. And I'm going to get my cereal and I'm going to get on the bus and be with my friends.
And of course, most importantly, you guys are here. Thank you so much for being here and making our little show part of your day. And here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off by talking about a few predetermined topics we got lined up for you guys. Then in the second part of the show is when we're going to take your live comments and questions. If you guys have a thought, theory, opinion, or question you'd like us to address, go ahead and use our super chat features to send it on in. It's still open right now, but after we get about 5 or 6 more super chats, I think we're going to turn it off. But if you've got one for us, send it on in. And as long as we deem it appropriate to be addressed on the show, we'll address it in the second part of the show. All right, guys. With that all down, let's get things started off here, shall we, today? And we're going to start off with this. You know, there's a lot of Kathleen Kennedy in the news today. Obviously, she's left Lucasfilm. We have new leaders of Lucasfilm, and we're going to talk about all that as the show goes on here today. But during one of her final interviews as the head of Lucasfilm, the topic of Indiana Jones came up. Now, of course, the most recent Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Circle of Time Watch Rolex, whatever it was called again. It's a pretty forgettable movie.
Dial of Destiny, buddy. Come on.
Dial of Destiny. That's what it was. It came and went. It became like the first significant flop of the Indiana Jones series. And it's raised the question that, you know, guys, a lot of people have had over the last couple of years is, are we going to get more Indiana Jones? I mean, we certainly don't think we're going to get any with Harrison Ford, but I suppose that's not impossible. But bigger picture, are we going to get more Indiana Jones in general? Well, one of the people who gets to make that decision, not because she was the head of Lucasfilm, but because she's the producer of the Indiana Jones films, is Kathleen Kennedy. And she addressed it when she said this. In an interview with Deadline, Kathleen Kennedy confirmed that Harrison Ford was the driving force behind Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. She said, he did not want Indy to end with the 4th movie. He wanted a chance at another, and we did that for him, Kennedy said. I don't think Indy will ever be done, but I don't think anybody's interested right now in exploring it, she added. These are timeless movies. These and Indiana Jones will never be done. Asked whether another Indiana Jones film could happen, Kennedy replied, you never know, but we are still here. Steven Spielberg, Frank and I, and Harrison and George Lucas. So we get to say whether there's going to be any more or not. Okay. So a couple things here. Number one, kind of a recognition that the latest one didn't work. Two, the fact that, and we had kind of heard this before, but I never really put a lot of stock in it, but apparently, like, really the main reason Indiana Jones 5 got made was really because Harrison Ford really wanted to do it. He really wanted it. He didn't want jungle swinging Indiana Jones Jr. boy to be the final installment. So they wanted to do another one. They ended up doing this one. Didn't quite work. But Rob, there's been some debate, obviously amongst the film fan circles, about whether there even should be, like, can you have Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford? I've always said absolutely yes. It's like saying, can you have James Bond without George Lazenby? Yes. Can you have James Bond without Sean Connery? Yes, you can. It might have felt like you couldn't at the time, but the answer was yes, you can. And so her saying Indy is never done. We could decide to do another one right now if we want, but nobody's really interested in doing another one right now. Rob, it seems like all indications are that we are going to get more Indiana Jones, but probably my guess is not in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe not in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe year 4 or 5 or whatever, and it'll be time to get another one. I personally am all for it. I think this is such a great character. I think you can tell stories with this character for generations. That's my take. Rob, what's your takeaway from Kennedy's comments here? And then ultimately, could you see them doing more Indiana Jones down the road?
Well, I actually did like the young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And especially when they went to what's his face? Was it Sean? Who played the older young Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
Why am I drawing a blank on his name? But anyway, Sean Patrick Flannery, right? That's his name. I liked that. There was a couple of really good episodes set in the era of like World War I. I think the problem with Indiana Jones is actually the period, the fact that where he exists in time, because if you think about it, Indiana Jones debuted in Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981. Now that was we're approaching, we're 45 years away from when that movie debuted, and that means we were 45 years closer to the period of time that Indiana Jones existed in. As a matter of fact, if you went back 45 years from 1981, you would be in 1936.
This is
right?
like time travel.
But that's the exact. We're as far away from Indiana Jones debuting as Raiders of the Lost Ark was from the time it was set, because it was in the jungles of South America in 1936, right?
Yep.
So we have all of that history between us. And I'm wondering, since the character is locked in a specific time period, I think the character could work. But some characters age out. I mean, when was the last time they've tried to make Tarzan movies, but when was the last time we saw a really successful Tarzan film that wasn't an animated Disney movie, which isn't constrained by time? And I would say that the character of Indiana Jones might be past its time, unless you come up with great stories. Like it was really interesting. They went backwards. We got some World War I stories. We got stories about the birth, well, not the birth, but of jazz and things that were really interesting about. You can't even get kids to watch movies that are set before 1990, and to try and make a franchise character that exists in that period of time, I think is a difficult proposition, where James Bond has been allowed to age, be concurrent. James Bond has always been concurrent to the time in which it was made, and the Indiana Jones is a period piece. So while I think the character could be rebooted, and I think you could get another actor, especially if you brought him young, made him younger, so he could age into the Indiana Jones that we know, it could absolutely work, maybe. But maybe it's a character that's past not his prime, but past his time.
That's why you got to do Indiana Jones 2099.
I don't agree at all. I don't think Indiana Jones is now what has caused to me the major cause of the fall off of Indiana Jones is two specific things. One is they haven't made good movies since Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I mean, like you don't have, it's like a lot of times film fans try to look for like national treasure secret clues as to why things are. It's as simple as this. They haven't made a good movie since, and by the way, I don't think Wheel of Time was the worst movie I saw that year. I don't think Alien Artifact was the worst thing I'd seen that year either. But the basic idea is they hadn't made a good movie since Last Crusade. Of course, there's going to be some fall off if you don't make a good movie since Last Crusade. The second thing, of course, is, well, I am all for 100% aging actors still playing action roles. It just got too much with the age Harrison Ford is at.
He's going to be 84 this year.
Yeah, I mean,
or he's going to be 85 this year. 84.
Harrison has never been better than he is in Shrink right now. Like he's amazing, but he's playing a character that's perfect for him right now. I just think a lot of people, and we heard all the jokes when it was coming out, it's like, we can't have this globe-trotting adventurer who's in his 80s. I mean, at that point, that just doesn't quite work. You need to transition him to something else. That being said, that means I think if you wait 4 or 5 years, reboot it. Rob, you know as well as anybody that Nazis are always in style as bad guys. And I think you reboot it, fresh face, fresh adventures, in that time period. I think there's no reason whatsoever, as long as you make good movies, I don't think there's any reason whatsoever that maybe not as big as Indiana Jones has ever been, but can still be a dominant, very relevant, modern adventure hero for the movie-going age if they did it right. But that's the catch, isn't it? Doing it right.
Yeah. But I don't disagree with you. But I also think that, history is marching on, and you're dealing with a character that was active 100 years ago. And that's fine. But I think that, look, we don't even know our own history anymore. So it's hard to get people involved with. I mean, there's so many people that we grew up with movies about World War II. I mean, some of my favorite movies, The Great Escape, Dirty Dozen, Where Eagles Dare, which I love. That was all part of the zeitgeist. I mean, even Spielberg made Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan in the 90s. But nowadays, I just don't know.
Dunkirk made a lot of money. Oppenheimer nearly joined $1 billion club. I think the key is simply you make good movies like Dunkirk, like Oppenheimer, like Last Crusade, only done today. I still think the audience will be there for it if done right.
Look at the popularity of the video game. That's the one that's called Great Circle. That
was
very popular. And I get it's a video game, but it's still Indiana Jones is still set in the 1930s.
But I would say this.
Perfect point.
But video games, Ghost of Tsushima is a great video game, and that's set in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
And video games are different because the past becomes fantasy. Whereas
but
you're watching a movie.
They're making a Ghost of Tsushima, and they're going to be making a God of War. Again, I think it just comes down to the quality of the film. I don't think anybody's rejecting a movie because of the time period it takes in. I think they've been rejecting movies because, this is a series that hasn't had a good film in almost 30 years.
Yeah, I mean,
this is a series where our main lead action star is 80 years old. What's his name who plays Sentry? Pullman. You get Pullman or somebody of that ilk in as a new fresh-faced Indiana Jones set in the Nazi war era, and you make it really good and exciting and adventurous and thrilling. I think everybody's coming out for it.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, there's plenty of great period pieces, everything from Boardwalk Empire. Hell, my audio drama is set in 1932 and 1933.
Boardwalk Empire is a great example.
Boardwalk Empire. Look, Peaky Blinders is but the thing about those shows too is the criminal impulse is something that hasn't changed then to today. And I think that we're now used to looking at feudal Japan as something that it's in a way it's adjunct to sword and sorcery, even though it actually happened.
Right.
Whereas
worked for Shogun.
Yeah, absolutely. But whereas the paradigm of Indiana Jones, I don't know. I mean, it would have to be really good. I think the problem is recreating that formula is really hard.
Yes. Oh, no doubt. 100%. But I would contend that making any movie good is really hard. So
yeah,
it's got as good of a chance as any. Anyway, Guy, we need to move on from this. Question is for you. What do you think about this? Kathleen Kennedy is saying, as the producer of the Indiana Jones films, Indy will never be done, but there's no interest to do another one right now. I think the era of the Harrison Ford Jones movies, as awesome as he is, that needs to end. But I can totally see them doing more in the future with a new, fresh face. Maybe you can't. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Well, it has happened. Some people might yell out, as in the glorious tune in Munchkinland, "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead." But Kathleen Kennedy is no longer, it's official now. It's not just the report that we covered last week. It's official. Kathleen Kennedy has stepped down as the president of Lucasfilm, and she's out. Now, we've talked a lot about her leaving. We just talked about that last week and all that kind of stuff. And you guys know for 5 or 6 years, I've been banging the drum of, while I will always be a big fan of Kathleen Kennedy, she's one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history. You're a straight up moron if you don't acknowledge that. Just look at her resume. It's better than just about anybody else's in history. She's great, but just because you're a good movie producer does not mean you're a good studio head. And I gave all the trust in the world to George Lucas. George handpicked personally He handpicked personally Kathleen Kennedy to take the job. And I, like everybody else, I thought that was a good choice at the time. But, it just became clear very quickly that being a great producer is not the same thing as being a good studio head. And for about 5 or 6 years, I've been saying she needs to go. A lot of people have been saying she needs to go. But having covered all the reasons why she needs to be gone, there is always two sides to every coin. And I thought that we would take a couple of minutes here. I thought it would be appropriate today to be intelligent and sit back and look at some of the actual victories, some of the wins, some of the high points, because you're straight up just have your head in the sand and completely biased if you don't acknowledge that there were victories and there were high points along the way. Even as somebody who's been saying for half a decade that she needs to go, even I will say, yeah, there were a number of high points. There were a number of wins. They didn't outpace the losses, but I thought we would talk about some of those losses. So I want to start with, obviously, just very quickly here, what some of the low points were. I mean, obviously, to me, I have said this for years and years and years and years. The biggest problem that Kathleen Kennedy faced being the head of Lucasfilm was the fact that she could not do the two most important things that the head of the studio needs to do. Number one, be on, get on, and identify when you and your filmmakers are on the same page. It became a circus, Rob, of the constant rotating door. It's become an ongoing running joke about the 75 announced Star Wars projects that either just never happened or they started to make them, and then Kathleen Kennedy and the filmmakers discovered they weren't on the same page. It's like, shouldn't you figure that out before you started shooting? The Lord and Miller situation is a great example of that. Then whether it was Taika Waititi's thing or even Kevin Feige's thing or Benioff and Weiss's thing or the this, the that, and the other thing and all this kind of stuff. She was simply a studio head that could never get on the same page creatively with her own filmmakers. And that, to me, is the one deadly sin. You cannot do that and be the head of the studio. So that was the one thing. The second thing was she very clearly failed to launch her era of Star Wars with a plan. There was no plan. It was all, let's just kind of take it as we go. And that became painfully obvious by the time we got to The Rise of Skywalker. And then even more painfully obvious by the time that after The Rise of Skywalker was done, we are now sitting on year 6, going into year 7, since we've had a Star Wars movie in theaters. You cannot be the head of the Lucasfilm studio and have that be the case. Now, then we can go into all the various projects that failed. Solo was a pretty good movie, to be honest with you. I'll argue anybody about that. I thought it was a pretty good movie, but it's a movie that never should have been made, at least not at the time. Then you got various shows that just never, shows like Acolyte, shows like Obi-Wan, shows, and I understand those shows will have their fans as well, in all respect, if that's the case for you. But for me, these were all things that could have been great, ended up being terrible. And don't even get me going on Rise of Skywalker, because I could be here for the next hour just waxing poetic about that. But you guys have heard me say all these things for years. So on the day that we are all kind of, the world is embracing the fact that Kathleen Kennedy's now left, let's do the other thing. Let's look at some of the wins. Let's look at some of the things that went well, shall we? And I'm going to start with, coming out of the gate, Phantom Menace. I know Phantom Menace isn't the biggest win for everybody, but the reality was I got a real kick as one of the world's biggest Star Wars obsessed guys on the planet. I got a real kick out of the movie. I really enjoyed it. Nearly as
Phantom. You said Phantom Menace.
Oh my God, I meant The Force Awakens.
Okay,
like she's been around for a long time.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for correcting me on that.
I'm just like,
Force Awakens. Force Awakens comes out. Yeah, Phantom Menace is another story altogether. But Force Awakens comes out because everybody today, guys, likes to rewrite history. Everybody is doing what, the Texas legislature is doing and trying to wipe out actual history and whitewash it. Everybody likes to pretend that There was the original trilogy, and then everything has been completely fine until The Force Awakens came along. Guys, Kathleen Kennedy took over a Star Wars that was still in massive recovery mode from the prequels. The prequels, as everybody forgets history and tries to rewrite history today, were an abomination and they were a disaster. They spurred overreactions from people saying like, George Lucas killed my childhood. George Lucas never killed your childhood. Okay, he made 3 bad movies, but he did not kill your childhood. But I still remember the newscast guys, fans coming out of the theaters of The Phantom Menace had gone in all in cosplay. And I remember these national news coming out of theaters, taking off their Jedi robes and burning them on sidewalks, taking out their costumes and throwing them in the garbage and crying about how George, that was the prequels. And that people forget that it was in that environment that Kathleen Kennedy, a few years later, took over Star Wars. And to this day, guys, Star Wars, The Force Awakens is still not Avengers Endgame, not an Avatar film. Star Wars The Force Awakens is the #1 US box office film of all time. Still to this day, it is that. Now, they all went downhill after that. There's no denying. It just went downhill after that. But we're here to give credit where credit is due. And she successfully kicked off a new era of Star Wars. Didn't stay good, but it kicked off well, and I want to give her credit for that. But that brings me, guys, to what I think is the biggest win that she had. John Favreau himself told this story. I was in the room at Star Wars Celebration, at D23. I was there in Anaheim, in the auditorium at D23, when John Favreau was out on stage and talking about The Mandalorian. And yeah, Mandalorian season 3, not so good. But let's not forget, seasons 1 and 2 were like the one thing that kind of unified the Star Wars fandom for a long time. And John Favreau on stage telling the story of, like, I remember walking into Kathleen Kennedy's office, she had a stack of pitches for new shows. And she saw something in mine. She saw something that could work in Mandalorian. But then he also went on to reveal, he said, so I went in to meet with Kathleen again, and she said, but here's the thing, John Favreau. Here's the thing, John. I want you to work with our guy, Dave Filoni. I think you and Dave Filoni would work really well together on this. And I think he can bring something to this that'll flesh it out even more and make it even better. And John Favreau said it was Kathleen Kennedy that matched me and Dave Filoni up. Because me and Dave knew each other already, but it was Kathleen Kennedy, said John Favreau, that put Dave and I together to make Mandalorian. Out of all the pitches she had, she saw that was special, and the rest was history. And I think in all the crapping that I do on the era of Kathleen Kennedy and her leadership and poor leadership of Lucasfilm, I think it's important that we also give her flowers. And that was a brilliant move. And it's been one of Star Wars's biggest successes since she took it over. Even though she had $4 billion films. Out of the 5 films she put out in theaters, 4 of them were $1 billion films. One of them was a $2 billion film, and still to this day, the highest grossing US box office film in history. So you got to give it up to her for matching her and Filoni, or Favreau and Filoni together, for picking Mandalorian, for getting that going, all that kind of stuff. Also, big credit for what was Rogue One, and then what became the best Star Wars thing ever created since the original trilogy, Andor. And really getting behind that, bringing in the right creative talent to do it, really supporting it, bringing it back for season 2, even though season 1 didn't have a lot of viewership numbers. The viewership in season 2 obviously went up a lot, but became the first Star Wars show ever, guys, to actually be nominated for the highest honor in television, Best Drama Series at the Emmys. And so, in the midst of all the failures that we have talked ad nauseum about for many years, I thought it was important today to at least take a moment and give the credit where credit is due for some of the high points. And by the way, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the 2 people that are taking over for her now at Lucasfilm, She picked them. She, a few years ago, elevated Dave Filoni to chief creative officer. She elevated him in the ranks. And now she picked him to be one of her successors. And we'll cover that in a little bit later on. Anyway, Rob, you know, we spend many years, we've been talking about all the things that have been going wrong with Star Wars and how, hey, great producer, but not a great studio head. Kathleen Kennedy needs to go. We've been saying that for years. But putting you on the seat now, okay, she's now gone. Let's give her credit where credit is due. Where would you point to some things that might be considered amongst all the lowlights, but some of the things that you might consider some of the highlights of her tenure and her era at Lucasfilm?
Well, as much as I'm loath to admit it, you have to say that The Force Awakens, bringing Star Wars back in grand fashion, was a huge triumph. And there was a lot of people that were incredibly excited about it. The fervor of that, the lead up to that film was incredible, you know, and as much as I am not a big fan of J.J. Abrams, I understand why he was hired. I think it was a canny move to hire him at the time. You had John Williams coming back to score it. You know, there was a lot to love. There was a lot to love about The Force Awakens, and that was a huge triumph for them. I think Carrie Fisher's death, and I think a lot of what went on. Look, I think the biggest mistake that was made by Disney when they acquired Lucasfilm is they didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't up to Lucasfilm to have a plan. It was up for Disney to have the plan. They bought the company, and they were just expecting, as so many people do, that the brand name will magically make them money. The same was true of Marvel and Disney Plus. Let's expect Disney Plus and Star Wars just to, we don't know what they're going to make yet, but we just expect them to drive our business. And I think the lack of synergy between Disney and Lucasfilm, and like you said, making a plan, was a huge mistake. You don't spend $4 billion and not have a plan. So I think that the dysfunction with Star Wars began before they even acquired Disney, before Disney acquired Star Wars. But obviously Force Awakens was a triumph. And you have to say, look, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I think Last Jedi was a triumph too. It made over $1.3 billion. It was never going to make the $2 billion that Star Wars Force Awakens made, but it was still an interesting film. I think if Rise of Skywalker paid off what was happening in Last Jedi, and you had a satisfying conclusion that could have brought all of those threads together instead of a weird recobbled together version of, I don't know what Rise of Skywalker was, but it certainly wasn't very fulfilling. I think it could have been a really effective trilogy. And I blame J.J. Abrams for that more than I would blame Kathleen Kennedy. I think that the writing was a problem. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy she's not somebody who got in the way of her creatives. I mean, the people, if you look at her track record for 40 years, it's impeccable in terms of who she worked with, but she facilitated those people's creativity. She didn't get in the way of it. So I think the problem was there was no synergy between Disney and Star Wars. But anyway,
as a studio head, wouldn't you say it's your job to get in the way of it when it needs to? Like this, that's the difference between I think a producer and being like a Kevin Feige or a Kathleen Kennedy. You're the head of the studio. Like, you're the person who has to be the grown-up in the room and recognize when something's going the wrong direction. And it is your job to interfere with your creatives if things are going off the rails, don't you think?
Not really. I mean, you don't see
really.
Look, when I was working at Warner Brothers, Bob Daly and Terry Semel, who ran Warner Brothers at the time, did not get in the way of the filmmakers once that ship had left, or the dock, or that train had left the station, because studio heads are not the people that are making the movies. They consult with the people that are. And Kathleen Kennedy was a great producer, but she's not a creative producer. I don't believe she ever had a credit as a story. Did she ever come up with it? I don't think she ever had a story credit on anything. So she was somebody that provided what her filmmakers needed to make their movies. But I don't think she's not a writer. You know, so I think that was the problem there. What Kathleen Kennedy should have been doing was working with Disney, deciding, what are we going to do with this franchise? What do you want done with the franchise? And that's what a studio head would do. Studio heads don't meddle in the day-to-day affairs unless there's wildly over budget things happening. and like what happened with Solo, she got involved with that because Lawrence Kasdan was pissed, and that was something that I could totally understand. But so what did she do? She found a solution in Ron Howard, and Ron Howard and Lawrence Kasdan were contemporaries of one another. That was a fix, although I would like to have seen what Lord Miller would have done. But I think that her position has been misconstrued in terms of what it was she was expected to do. Everyone thought that she was like on one hand, the stuff that creatively worked, it worked because the creative team was like Andor. You know, she facilitated that. She expected the people that she hired. If you look at her plan, the people that she hired, like getting Colin Trevorrow coming from to do Duel of the Fates, and the plan that she had put together originally for the trilogy, the prequel or the sequel trilogy, was pretty good. It should have worked, but you had Carrie Fisher's death that derailed it. And then Colin Trevorrow suddenly became somebody that he did really well in Jurassic World. That was a Frank Marshall production, but then he made this little film that didn't do very well. Can we entrust him to do that? So and there was moves that she made that she had to then recant and stop. Like Weiss and Benioff were going to do a trilogy, then Game of Thrones kind of tanked in its last season. So there was a lot of other things going around that she also had to contend with. So I think that what was great was when she had people like Tony Gilroy who helped shape Rogue One. It was a genius move to have him come back and do Andor.
100%.
And I think that was something she did that was amazing. Now, getting Favreau to work with Filoni, that's what a studio head does. I want to put you creatives together. Now, Favreau, you got great ideas, but you should get together with our dude Filoni. That's what a great studio head does. And then they let their creatives go do things. And I think Mandalorian was a triumph in its conception. And the fact that they're making a Mandalorian movie is terrific. I hope the movie's terrific. Season 3 wasn't great, but I think season 3 wasn't great for other reasons. I don't blame Kathleen Kennedy. It exists at all because of her. And so I also think that the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie or series was, I think, a good idea. I think getting Ewan McGregor to come back was a great call, probably on her part. But again, I think the creative on that failed because they had to do things like bring in young Leia. This was probably a Disney call more than it was a Kathleen Kennedy call, because again, she got the train out of the station. But I think she was, again, the people they hired to do that stuff, and that's what I blame her for, is that the creatives that they brought on to do a lot of these things were not necessarily up to snuff. But I understand getting somebody like Deborah Chow to direct. I get where she was coming from, although, didn't work out so well. But ultimately, I would say her tenure, and I will say this too, they had a lot of problems coming up with that Indiana Jones script, and I don't blame like Phoebe Waller-Bridge's involvement, and James Mangold was definitely a great choice to direct. I just think that there were probably too many things, that they wanted to touch on, like the direction they took Indiana Jones, I think, was a bad move to make him sort of this sad sack guy. Indiana Jones is a badass, and he wasn't a badass in that movie. They made him this disgruntled college professor. I think that was a bad move. He should have been Gandalf the White, and a badass. And he wasn't. But I think that and the Willow TV series, my God, that was a complete disaster. Again, I think I blame the creatives of the show more than I blame her. What a missed opportunity that was. And yeah. Yeah.
We've gone on way too long on this. We're going to have to cut away. But guys, the question is for you. Now that Kathleen Kennedy is gone, let's take a moment and be objective. It wasn't however many years of just straight failure. There were high points. There were wins. We've never suggested that there wasn't. What to you were some of the highlights and some of the wins now that her era is done? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, Let's move on to this, shall we? Well, the era of Kathleen Kennedy is now over. The king is dead. Long live the king, because now we have not one, but two new heads of Lucasfilm. And they were actually, as we alluded to earlier, they were handpicked by Kathleen Kennedy, who, I mean, Dave Filoni was her favorite kid. I mean, let's just be honest. That became obvious very early. Dave Filoni was Kathleen Kennedy's favorite child. I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but Filoni was hers. So this came to us from a report. And when Kennedy's talking, then says, Kennedy is stepping down from her executive role at Lucasfilm in early 2026. That's now happened. Naming Dave Filoni and Lynwen Brennan as the successors to lead Lucasfilm. She said this, 2 years ago, I went to Bob Iger, and Alan Bergman, the head of films at Disney, to figure out what the transition plan would be, she said. I made the recommendation that it be Dave Filoni and Lynwen Brennan. She plans to return to producing and confirmed involvement in future Star Wars projects alongside Frank Marshall as a producer, which is a good place for her to be. Anyway, so I think it's fascinating that we find out just as George Lucas handpicked Kathleen Kennedy handpicked Lynwen Brennan and Dave Filoni to be the new heads of Lucasfilm. So I think that's telling. And even though it hasn't been a great era, it's good that there's going to be some consistency. It's good that there's going to be a good succession plan here, and it should be able to transition fairly smoothly. So that brings us to where are my hopes and fears for this era? From all accounts, we obviously don't know a lot about Lynwen Brennan. Just from everything we hear, she is an excellent executive. Everything, the people I've talked to, not like there's been dozens of them. I've talked to about 3 or 4 people who are familiar with her. One even knows her and are familiar with the inner workings of Lucasfilm and stuff like that. And the reputation she's garnered has been one of excellence, that she is an excellent movie executive, an excellent company executive. So that's a good thing to do, because one of the big problems that I have always had with the idea of Dave Filoni taking over the studio is that Dave Filoni doesn't know jack shit about running a studio. Well, it seems like Kathleen Kennedy a number of years ago had already started to be planning her exit, because I think she recognized that too, and then elevated Dave Filoni to the role of chief creative officer, putting him in a position to have a couple of years of actually building some experience in those C-level suite offices and being more around what do executives need to do to run a studio? What is it like on this level to run a studio? Which makes me suspect that she's actually been grooming Dave Filoni to take this over at some point by giving him those years of experience as a chief executive. And, then also adding Lynwen to be the co-adult in the room with him to help him out in that area. So I think that's good. And, so I have my main worry about Dave Filoni having no experience in this has been mitigated a little bit by the fact that Kathleen Kennedy has given him several years of experience, and the fact that we've got Brennan coming in to be the more seasoned, experienced executive, make the big boy decisions for the company overall. So that makes me feel a little bit better about it. But Rob, I'm going to say that my 2 main apprehensions still stand. And those apprehensions are that, number 1, he has very extreme limited experience in making anything live action. And when he has made something live action, like Ahsoka, number 1, it wasn't very good. And number 2, it felt more like he was still making a cartoon show than, and don't get me, I love Star Wars Rebels, don't get me wrong, but live action needs to feel different than animation. And Ahsoka wasn't very good. And it felt like he only knows how to make cartoons. And that's a problem. Can he move beyond that? Absolutely he can. He's exhibited that he has a very teachable spirit. He wants to learn, he wants to grow, and that's the perfect mindset. And that's why I've always been a big fan of his. My second big concern, besides the fact that he's got 0 experience making live action stuff, and the stuff he has made has not been all that good, has been his apparent complete obsession with old Star Wars. Like he seems obsessed. Well, number one, he's obsessed with Ahsoka. Everything's got to be Ahsoka. Ahsoka, everything's got to be Ahsoka. And he's also obsessed with that whole prequel era. And we need Star Wars to move beyond that. We need Star Wars. We've had 50 years almost. We're approaching 50 years of this one confined era of Star Wars. It's time to start moving forward. Can Dave Filoni be the guy to do that? He can. He can. And I'm going to be cheering for him. But I do worry that they just named a new co-president who's kind of got his boots stuck in the mud of the era we've always been in, and he can't move beyond it. So that's my fear. But can he make something great? He absolutely can. Can he move forward and move Star Wars forward from where it's been stuck for so long? He absolutely can. Will he is my worry and my fear. So, Rob, I'm going to be sitting in the stands. I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines. I don't have one here. Pretend this is it. I'm going to have my Dave Filoni flag, and I'm going to be sitting in the stands, waving my Filoni flag, Filoni and Brennan. I'm going to be waving that flag, saying, "Go team, go." I'm going to hope for the best. I'm going to cheer them on. I just have some worries right now, and I really hope those get alleviated. But at least, Rob, I can say that one big fear I've had 4 or 5 years ago about Filoni having no experience, Kathleen Kennedy seems to have done some things to alleviate that a little bit, and that's a good thing. So how are you feeling today? Number one, about the fact that we're finding out that Kathleen Kennedy herself is the one who picked Brennan and Filoni to take over for her. And then number two, how are you feeling today about those two now being the stewards of Lucasfilm?
Well, I think that I want to say Bronwyn. What's her first name? It's a
Lynwen.
Lynwen. It's a cool name. I like that. I like that choice. I mean, somebody who understands business and somebody who understands where the bodies are buried. And Lucasfilm is not a company that does things for low budgets. So knowing how to manage that kind of money and knowing how to wield those kinds of financial tools is a good thing. Dave Filoni, to me, I want him to succeed like you. I'll be waving the flag from the sidelines, hoping he succeeds. I do find, look, anybody who's worked primarily in animation has different creative concerns than live action does. And I think that, Filoni, I think, has a pretty fundamentalist adherence to George Lucas's quote unquote rules and how everything is supposed to work. And that's fine on one hand, but when you want to break out the universe and make it more broad-minded, there's a lot going on in that Star Wars universe. And like you said, it's been a little constrained in terms of how we've seen it. And I would like to see more of it. Now, Filoni he's created a lot of good characters, whether it's Clone Wars, Rebels, Ahsoka too. I mean, I think Ahsoka is a great character that's been a little, I think she's never lived up to the potential that Dave Filoni has in her mind. I mean, she was a great character on the animated shows, didn't translate so well to live action. Although I think they did pick the perfect actress to play her.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, and the whole Ahsoka show is, I shook my head at a lot of what went on in that show, especially using Grand Admiral Thrawn and not well, and all that. And I really still object to the fact how Timothy Zahn was treated. And in a way, I hope, they started using Thrawn before they'd even checked with Zahn. And although it was work for hire and technically they owned all that stuff, those characters belonged to him as a novelist. He created them out of whole cloth. And yes, it was work for hire, but, in the way they brought him up to Lucasfilm and told him they were already using Thrawn instead of asking him, that's always kind of been like, that's not good.
You know how I feel about that, though, Rob. Like, if I buy this cup from you and I pay you for it and it's mine now, I don't need to check in with you to see if it's okay with you that I put Dr. Pepper in it or not. It's mine. I don't need to check in with you to see if it's okay.
I get that, but Disney didn't own that character when Timothy Zahn agreed to write it, and I think that if you're going to translate, and by the way, if you're going to translate, I understand the ownership, but Writers Guild rules, if you created something for movies or television, you have somewhat of control over what happens to your characters that you create. And not when it's not like those characters, of all the characters that were created for the novels, those particular characters in the Heir to the Empire series was a unique kind of a big one-off event. And I think that he deserved a little bit better treatment. That's all.
I listen, I have met and talked to Timothy Zahn. I love the Heir to the Empire trilogy, but again, if I buy your car from you, it's mine. I don't need your permission to drive it to Vegas. It's
yeah, but
mine
you
now.
But you
know what I would have done? What I would have done, Rob, is I would have brought him into the writer's room. I would have asked him to come into the writer's room to at least give his perspective. But not doing that, I think it's pearl clutching to say I don't think there's any offense intended or given by not bringing him in to do that. Like those novels were written over 3 decades ago. So I don't know how I feel about that. But at any rate, getting back to Filoni and Lynwen Brennan, it's going to, what it reminds me of a lot, Rob? And I think you might have brought this up before. It reminds me a lot of the current DC situation, where you have in the one guy, James Gunn, who's the hardcore comic book guy, and you bring in Peter Safran, the more seasoned and experienced executive level guy. And that is a balance that seems to be working for DC. And I think you were the one that first pointed that out to me, that this has that kind of, can you see that working out here in this situation?
100%. It's like Brian Grazer and Ron Howard. They've had an incredible run at Imagine Pictures, and Brian Grazer's the money guy, the producer guy, and Ron Howard's the creative. And that is a really great synergistic relationship to have, because if you can trust somebody to come in and say, look, we want to do this, here's how much it's going to cost, and the money person says, okay, can we make it cost 20% less? How can we do that? And if you understand you're not adversarial, that you're working together, that can be a very rare, very synergistic relationship that can benefit everyone in the long run. So I absolutely think that's the case here.
All right, guys, question is for you. We have entered only the third era for Star Wars. We had the George Lucas era. We had his handpicked successor, Kathleen Kennedy's era. And now we have her handpicked successors in Lynwen Brennan and Dave Filoni's era. Will these two be able to work together the way that, say, James Gunn and Peter Safran do? Will it become contentious? Are they both still going to be there in a year? We'll find out. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? It's always a treat when we get to go see movies that we've loved on the big screen again. I've got a 100-inch TV hanging on a beautiful 100-inch TV hanging on my wall with a Sonos surround sound speaker. It's great, but it's garbage compared to actually being in a movie theater and watching these movies the way they've been meant to see. And one of the best examples of that is The Lord of the Rings. Now, around where we live, and probably a lot around where you guys live too, Lord of the Rings re-releases in theaters aren't all that unusual, but there's a big one coming up for the 25th anniversary. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety, who said this thing's pre-sales have already exceeded, the pre-sales for this re-release has already exceeded $5 million at the box office. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy is returning to theaters for the 25th anniversary of the Fellowship of the Ring, and cinephiles seem eager to return to Middle-earth. Showtimes for the 3 films, Fellowship of the Ring, only on January 16th, The Two Towers on January 17th, and Return of the King on January 18th, have generated $5 million domestically in pre-sales, with roughly 500,000 tickets sold so far. That's 65% ahead of the company's last Lord of the Rings re-release in 2024, which had about 250,000 tickets sold at the same point sales cycle. And those went on to earn $8.2 million over the same weekend. So now, granted, we are hitting a significant anniversary, the 25th anniversary, which is great. But Rob, these movies are now going back to Fellowship, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And they're available on streaming, and They are re-released in theaters here and there all the time. And yet still, for this 25th anniversary, the advanced ticket sales are above what some new release movies are making, with over 5 million in advanced tickets. Rob, we all know The Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest trilogies ever made. Some would argue the greatest. Not me, but it's right up there. We already know the movie's great. What is it about this movie? What it is about the culture surrounding these movies that keeps people coming back to see them again and again in theaters, to the point that we've now got $5 million in box office on pre-sales alone for just 3 days? What's the magic sauce here? How do you see it?
Well, I think you said it, and you said it a zillion times on this show. They're experiential events. They're events that provide everything you want movies to provide. But most of all, you go through an engrossing emotional experience watching these films that all 3 movies lead up. They take you on a journey internally, externally, of adventure, excitement, fantasy, introspection, friendship. In a way, The Lord of the Rings, and especially how the Fellowship works, is a lot like real life, believe it or not. If you think about traversing all the things that Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin have to deal with, they're us. We're the hobbits. And I think that everybody can kind of identify immediately when Frodo opens his mouth and says, "You're late." And a wizard is never late.
It's never late.
Frodo Baggins. I mean, as soon as that happens, after you watch this really interesting Kate Blanchett history of the world in 5 minutes, and you're in. But when you get into the Shire, we all live in the Shire, or we want to. A nice bucolic neighborhood where your neighbors are out sweeping, judgmental neighbors that look at Gandalf with a scowl on their face, kids that are excited with fireworks, so you immediately love these people and this place, and it falls to them to save the world. It's the ultimate wish fulfillment, I think, of just any normal human being. And the message is that anybody can make a difference. Anybody can. And if you have your friends with you, and you have people that believe in you, if you have teachers, and sometimes you might be working with somebody that turns out to be a villain, and then you've got the fantasy and the excitement of it all, and the wonder, and the crazy wizards, and the orcs, and Minas Tirith, and Theoden, not and a red dawn. I mean, and the beacons of Gondor are lit. Come on, dude, with a Howard Shore score, and you're the cameras and Peter Jackson's direction. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I love those movies, and you know what? They never fail to deliver. I've seen those movies. I've worked on the special features, watched them countless times, and I still sit down and watch them just like The Godfather. I can't stop. Just recently, I don't know, a couple months back, I went back and watched the extended version of Return of the King, and I'm like, God damn, this movie's good. And to see it if you haven't seen it on a big screen, it's like when they brought Star Wars back. The Star Wars special edition came out in 97, and that was only 20 years after Star Wars came out. And they showed you the trailer with the little TV screen, and they had the X-Wing fighter come out of the TV. I mean, it's 25 years. You have a whole new generation of people that never saw these movies on the big screen. And to see these movies in a decent theater with a decent sound system, talk about experiential event. And you know what? It never gets old. A whole new generation. Think about it, man. There's kids that are like 8 and 9 years old that have not seen these movies at all. And their parents get to take them to a movie theater and see it. They're gonna. I
remember when the pandemic happened. The 2 biggest ones ever all submitted. When the pandemic was going on and all we had to do was to stay home and watch movies, there were 2 that really stood out that everybody wrote in that said, I finally watched. One was the Godfather films, and the other was the Lord of the Rings. The number of people who wrote and said, I never saw Godfather. I'm like, really? And then the number of people who wrote and said they never saw Lord of the Rings. Rob, when you bring up that scene of, a wizard is never late.
And that's just the first 10 minutes.
He arrives precisely when he means to. And then he gets in the cart. They ride over the hill, and you see the Shire. Now, you got to understand that I didn't read a lot of novels as a kid, but The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings were ones that I did. And it was the first moment I think I ever wept in a theater when you go over the hill and you see the Shire,
the bridge,
and you hear that Shore, you hear that Alan Shore music, and you like
Howard Shore.
The life,
Alan Shore's
Howard Shore. Sorry, yeah, that's James Spader's character on Boston Legal.
It's Ultron.
Howard Shore's music, and you see the Shire. I wept,
dude,
because I've never had a moment in any movie ever where something literally bounded out of my imagination the way I always pictured it would be. And the Lord, like Star Wars to me is still the number one trilogy of all time. That'll never be touched, but it never made me cry. And there's like 5 moments that if I even today sit down and watch Lord of the Rings, I get choked up and get weepy. The Shire scene, obviously, light the beacons. The beacons have been lit. Gondor calls for aid.
That just gives me chills again.
The whole thing about obviously when they say, "My friends, you bow to no one." I get choked up and teary eyed. It is just a film experience. And then we haven't even touched, Rob, on just the grand epic nature of them. The Battle of Helm's Deep, the Battle of Gondor, it's just so grand and huge too. There has never been films like The Lord of the Rings. And Rob, I'll go so far as to say this: there will never be films like The Lord of the Rings.
No, because you had an entire country, literally the entire country of New Zealand. The entire country helped. And the landscape and the fact that it was that, talk about if there's such a thing as an artisanal film, it was handcrafted by all the clever people. When I was working, we started working on the special features for the extended versions, and none of us had seen any of the movie. And they had, the first time they ever showed any of Lord of the Rings was at Cannes. They showed a 20-minute reel at the Cannes Film Festival. I want to say Cannes, it might have been 2001, because that was the year that it came out. And we were begging New Line, please, please, please let us see it. Because what if it's not good? But the Cannes notices of the 20 minutes were so it was like the team of us. There was like 25 of us. And we're sitting in this room, the New Line screening room, the one on the first floor. And dude, I was gobsmacked. And most of it was the Mines of Moria sequence.
Oh,
and the scale of it. And like the fantasy was never my jam. Like I loved Excalibur, but they'd never really nailed fantasy on screen. Dragon Slayer was good, but not great. We watched that sequence, and the first thing we were saying, like, oh my God, can you run it again? They didn't, but I mean, it was insane watching it. And I'm like, I've never seen fantasy depicted on screen like this before. When they knock over the thing and it falls like down the well, you hear the ding, 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 and then then you hear the stirring in the Mines of Moria. And I mean, in the theater, the sound, I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen? It was so awesome. And I mean, seeing those movies in a theater was just, and we'd worked on all the special features before we saw. I mean, we were 6 months in, and it was like, oh my God, to see those. And every time I've ever watched those movies, I feel the same way. I never get tired of it.
I still get it too. Anyway,
I want to
go
see them again in the theater just to see the kids respond to, it's like when I saw School of Rock.
I just want to see it myself.
But I love seeing everybody respond to it.
Question is for you. What do you think about this? The 25th anniversary re-release of Lord of the Rings has already generated $5 million in ticket sales, despite the fact that they've been in theaters a bunch and you can stream them right now. Are you planning to go see them again? I certainly would like to. Whatever you guys think about it, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, listen, I know today's show's already been long, but we still have a few other topics we need to talk about, including that shelved Jon Snow spinoff series. It sounds like it's back on the menu, boys. It looks like that's going to be coming back again. Also, George R.R. Martin, and speaking of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin is now saying that his relationship with the showrunner of House of the Dragon is quote unquote abysmal. And for those people who are worried about it, Netflix has now come out and actually put a date to it. They say they are committed to a full, what is now the industry standard, 45-day theatrical window for Warner Brothers Films. We're going to talk about those things and a few things more. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, our friends at BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You know, the new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burdened you. Most of us carry around things like pressure, self-doubt, or that feeling that we always have to be perfect, and learning to let some of that go can make a huge difference in our lives. Therapy can help you better understand what's weighing you down by giving you an unbiased perspective on your relationships, motivations, and emotions. That's where BetterHelp comes in. See, BetterHelp connects you with quality therapists who are fully licensed in the US and follow a strict professional code of conduct. They also do the matching work for you. You fill out a short questionnaire, and with over 12 years of experience and industry-leading match rates, they usually get it right the first time. And if you ever want to switch therapists, you can do that easily from their tailored recommendations. BetterHelp is also one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, plus an average 4.9 out of 5 rating from over 1.7 million live session reviews. BetterHelp makes it easy to match online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/Campea. That's BETTERHELP.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this. You know, still easily by far and away the most successful television show of all time is Game of Thrones. I mean, it set all the records for Emmy wins and viewership and everything you can possibly name at it, and had a massive pop cultural footprint throughout the run of the series. Even going into its maligned final season, set all kinds of records, including Emmy wins and viewership and all that kind of stuff. Well, you guys might remember that a couple years after the end of Game of Thrones, word came out that HBO was looking at developing a Jon Snow spinoff to carry on his story after the end when he goes north of the Wall. And then we found out a while ago that those plans got shelved. Well, apparently it's back. The new report has come out that insiders at HBO are saying they are now developing that Jon Snow series again, but this time with a little bit of a twist, because it's now, instead of just focusing on Jon Snow, it's apparently going to focus on Jon Snow and Arya. This comes to us from Entertainment Weekly, who write the following. While the project is still in early stages, The Hollywood Reporter says that the story now shifts from just Jon's life beyond the borders of the North and now to the Mediterranean-like land of Essos. Another addition to the story will reportedly be Jon's favorite, it calls her cousin, well, in a way she is, Arya Stark, who was played by Maisie Williams on Game of Thrones. And I'll tell you what, when the series, I like hearing this, because when the series ended, not only did I think, yeah, I would like to see what happens with Jon after he goes north of the Wall, I also thought where Arya ended up was really fascinating too, that she wanted to go and explore the edges of the world. And I thought that was really interesting too. And so I'm all for this. I would love to see a true sequel to the Game of Thrones series. I'd love to see where things go after all that. George R.R. Martin is already now, he's finally admitted that he's probably never going to finish the book series. So there's that. So I would really like to see this. So count me as somebody who's pretty happy to hear this news, because I think there's a lot to go there. And I think those two characters had great chemistry together. Anyway, Rob, it looks like HBO right now is looking at picking back up on that Jon Snow, but making it different than before, because now it looks like it's going to focus on him and Arya. Too late? Good idea? Do you like it? What are your thoughts on this?
I love the idea. I mean, I think that one of the great, I think Maisie Williams, one of the great things about season 8 was her performance. I thought she got better and better at playing Arya. I thought she got to do a lot of interesting stuff. You know, I bet when she started the show, once they ran out of books, she had no idea where they were going to take her, and like her journey with the Hound and then finally reuniting with Sansa back at Winterfell. I thought all that stuff was terrific. So I think making her the focus of a show is really interesting, especially if you take that show and eventually Jon Snow and her are going to come into conflict with one another, as happens in Westeros. I love the idea. I think it's a great idea. You know, I think one of everyone's favorite characters was actually both of those characters I think are beloved, and to bring them back is a no-brainer. And to see them, I could see them both wanting to transform Westeros with what they've learned as leaders of some kind, and then they wind up in conflict. I can see that this could end up being a great show. I'm in.
All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? It sounds like that shelved Jon Snow project may be back on the drawing board, but this time also with Arya. I love the idea. I mean, it could go bad, but I think it's worth taking a kick at. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, you know what? It's always interesting when you hear people who were attached to something and the people who are attached to something not getting along so well. And that, unfortunately, is kind of the story right now, as there are reports coming out that George R.R. Martin, it's not just reports, it's him himself saying that him and his relationship with the guy who is now the showrunner of House of the Dragon, that the state of their relationship, as George R.R. Martin would say, is now abysmal and not good at all. And he's complaining about it. The article from Superhero Hype goes on and explains this. During the airing of House of the Dragon Season 2, Martin wrote a now deleted blog post that mentioned a gripe he had with several changes Ryan Condal, that's the new showrunner of House of the Dragon, made in the TV adaptation of his book Fire and Blood. Since Martin's blog post, his relationship with Condal has deteriorated. It's worse than Rocky, Martin told the Hollywood Reporter. It's abysmal. Martin and Ryan Condal co-created House of the Dragon. Martin hired Condal to work on it with the adaptation, and in the development stages, the creative partnership flourished. I thought Ryan and I were partners, Martin explained, and we were all through the first season. I would read early drafts of the script. I would give him notes. He would change some things. It was working really well, I thought. Martin then supported Condal when the later butted heads with co-showrunner Miguel I always mispronounce his name. Sapochnik.
Sapochnik.
Yeah.
I always mispronounce his name. After season 1, Sapochnik, who won a directing Emmy for working on Game of Thrones, departed the series. However, Martin explains how things changed with Condal working on season 2. Then we got to season 2, and he basically stopped listening to me, Martin said. I would give notes and nothing would happen. Sometimes he would explain why he wasn't doing it. Other times he would tell me, oh, okay, yeah, I'll think about that. It got worse and worse, and I began to get more and more annoyed. Finally, it got to a point where I was told by HBO that I should submit all my notes to them directly and that they would give Ryan our combined notes. Then things reached a heated conclusion during a Zoom call with the show's producers and HBO executives. Martin disagreed with Condal's ideas for season 3 and allegedly said, this is not my story any longer. All right. I got to admit, I have torn feelings on this because on the one hand, I have heard, and I know a lot of people have heard this too, that George is not an easy guy to work with, and that not of all of his ideas are awesome when it comes to translating things from page to screen. And it sounds like that at some point the guy just stopped returning his calls. It sounds like it got to the point it's like, I can't take this anymore. You're just adding stress to my life. I need to cut this out. And he just stopped responding to his calls. So, but at the same time, while that is true on one hand, at the same time, what is also true is the other side of my brain, which is, I don't know, man, like even if you don't take any of his suggestions, you've got the creator of the universe here. At least hear him out. Like, let him continue to have a direct line to the showrunner. And if the showrunner doesn't want to take the ideas, then don't take the ideas. That's why you're the showrunner. You can decide to not take the ideas. That's fine. But at least hear him out. And so the fact that it got so bad that he's like, I don't even want George messaging me anymore. If George has ideas, send them to HBO, and then HBO can send them to me. That sounds pretty bad. And I don't know how, like, I don't know if George did or said things or maybe conducted himself a way that, Ryan just didn't want to deal with him anymore. I don't know if Ryan developed a king complex, like, hey, without Miguel here, I can just, or Sapochnik here, I can just do things my own way. I don't have to listen to anybody else. Maybe that's the case. So maybe he's got a king complex. Maybe George is just really difficult. I don't know. All I know is that it's really unfortunate because, listen, I had my doubts about House of the Dragon. I love this show. I mean, I straight up love it. And I love season 2 every bit as much as I love season 1. In some ways, I liked it even more. But I love the idea of these two guys working together. And it's kind of sad to me, Rob, to hear that their relationship has gotten to this point. Anyway, Rob, you heard the story about this. What's your main takeaway from it as you read through it?
Well, like you, I mean, look, people forget that George R.R. Martin was a writer-producer for 3 seasons on the 1987 fantasy series Beauty and the Beast that starred Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton. So he is not unaware of how television works. He was a writer and a producer on that show. And I would think that, yeah, now maybe he's become more of a crotchety old man, but he did create the universe. And season 2 was, I think, demonstrably not nearly as effective as season 1. Now, you could say maybe because they cut it short, but I would say, look, whether I understand egos and working in TV is very fraught with peril and pressure. So I get that, but I think that George R.R. Martin is an executive producer and co-creator of House of the Dragon. So you better mend fences and be professional about it. And it's not like George R.R. Martin's over there on set causing a problem. He's talking to you from a distance. And I would say that, like you said, he is the creator of the world and the book that it's all been based on. So, you should take his input and at least if you can't deal with him, he is a necessary evil for you. So just kind of make it work.
Yeah. And you just pointed out the big difference, because I see some people who aren't paying attention in the live chat going things like, well, if you think he should take George R. R. Martin's call, why don't you think they should take Timothy Zahn's call? Well, as Rob just pointed out, George R. R. Martin is one of the co-creators of House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
He was a producer on the show. I'm not talking about this just as him as the guy who wrote the books. I'm talking about him as a guy who's already involved with the show. And again, to me, it just kind of saddens me that their relationship has deteriorated to that point. But you know what? Look, at the end of the day, as a viewer, all I care about is you give me a good show.
Yeah.
And so far, House of the Dragon for me has delivered in spades.
It has. I don't
think it's as good as Shogun, but I think it's been pretty damn great. And I look forward to seeing where season 3 goes. Anyway, guys, what do you think about this? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to this. Of course, one of the biggest things in all the world of entertainment right now is the impending sale of Warner Brothers to apparently Netflix, but Paramount is still sulking like a little whiny bitch around the courtrooms trying to get anybody to listen to them. But Paramount could still come out on top of this too. But for now, Netflix has technically won the bidding war and they're moving forward as if they're getting ready to take over the studio. Now, one of the biggest apprehensions that a lot of people have had, including me, has been Netflix has never played well with movie theaters. And that's been to their detriment, in my opinion. And I said when the news first came out that Netflix wanted to get a hold of Warner Brothers, I said Netflix getting Warner Brothers would be the worst possible case scenario. Now, in subsequent weeks, they have done some things to soften me on that. Talking about, hey, listen, theatrical is still not Netflix's business, but it is Warner Brothers' business. And Warner Brothers is in the theatrical business. That's why we want it. We want Warner Brothers to stay in the theatrical business. Why would we buy it otherwise? We already do streaming. We're already the king of streaming by a mile. We want them because they're a movie studio and we want to get into the business. And then they said, we're still committed to a theatrical window. But Rob, even that raised questions because people were like, well, what do you mean by a theatrical window? 5 days? 7 days? Fair questions. Well, now this headline in Deadline has come out. Ted Sarandos has now come out and said straight up in an interview, no. 45, the current industry standard 45-day theatrical window. And then he goes on in this article to explain why. He says, because there's billions of dollars of revenue to be made. He said, I now want to be the champion of the box office. We're champions of streaming already. I now want us to be the champions of the box office as well. And right now, the way they do it, 45-day windows, which I wish the industry standard was larger than that, but 45 is what it is. We're committed to it. That's what we are doing because it's in our best interests to do it that way. Netflix isn't going to adopt it. Netflix isn't going to start putting out its original movies in theaters because that's not what Netflix does. But Warner Brothers, this is why we want to buy them. Because it gives us a theatrical studio, because it gives us a distribution workflow. It gives us all that stuff, and that's what we want, and that's why we're going to stay committed to a 45-day window. So, Rob, I'm still of the mindset that the best possible outcome of this whole thing is that Warner Brothers doesn't sell to anybody and just stays Warner Brothers. That's my choice. But I understand that's not happening. So what's the next best thing? Well, I got to say, I have been convinced. I'm convinced now. I have gone from Netflix getting it being the worst case scenario to now Netflix getting it being the best case scenario if Warner Brothers isn't just going to stay independent. Because they're going to keep Warner Brothers with a semblance of independence. And for an industry standpoint, Rob, and Ted Sarandos points this out too in his interview, that listen, Paramount, just by merging with Skydance, Paramount laid off billions of dollars worth of people, laid off so many people. And Ted Sarandos said again, if they get Warner Brothers, it's going to be tens of thousands of people, he said, would get laid off or going to lose their jobs. He said, with us, we're keeping everybody because we don't have any overlap. There's nobody that's in a position at Netflix that would have a similar position at Warner, but they're two separate companies. We're going to keep everybody. So I've gone from being very, very against Netflix to getting them to being, well, if Warner Brothers isn't just going to stay independent, I guess Netflix is the next best thing. So I love what I'm hearing here, Rob. You have read this interview. What are your big takeaways from what Ted Sarandos was saying?
Well, again, he's talking about, he's come out and said, while one group is suing Warner Brothers, Ted Sarandos is coming out and saying, yeah, we're going to commit to a 45-day window. Because I think he understands that basically what he's buying is credibility for his own network. That he's got a conduit of stuff that's going to get an A-list treatment around the until and I think also, you know why I think Ted Sarandos doesn't have a problem with any of this? Because rightly or wrongly, he knows that the theatrical marketplace is on it's not going to last much longer. He knows that eventually the theatrical business, it's either going to be sustained in major cities, like look at the list you read yesterday. You know, on the most successful movie theaters, New York, LA, Toronto, pretty much.
But it's never been anything other than that. Like, right. You go back to 1990, then those would have been the cities that were the biggest.
But movie going is still big, of course. But I'm just saying that movie going is diminishing in many different places. And while there's probably always going to be movie theaters like IMAX theaters and event things like that, he knows that why not support theatrical for as long as it exists? Because all it does is add to the value of our library. And if Warner Brothers has the year in 2026, 2027, 2028 that they had in 2025, and we get all those movies, all that diverse slate from everything from Sinners to Final Destination to One Battle After Another to whatever, that's a great thing for Netflix in the long run. And those are movies that are never going to go out of style. And why not, as long as they're going to have theatrical bankability behind them, all it does is help our brand. And you don't see that coming from Paramount. You know, Netflix is in the business of entertainment. They want great TV and they want great movies because they want people to keep subscribing to their network. and there's nothing to lose by allowing Warner Brothers to do. They want Warner Brothers to Warner Brothersing, or keep Warner Brothersing. That's what they want. And I think that's a really smart, very savvy business model to take. I mean, why would you want to take, you're buying Warner Brothers for yourself. That's the stock price. David Zaslav has increased that stock price. They've had a great year. They're probably going to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards this year. And they made $2 billion on horror movies or whatever. I mean, it's all good. Ted knows that. Ted's no dummy. Look at how happy him and David Zaslav were on the back lot walking around Warner Brothers.
Well, I mean, look, there's a couple things I want to address. Number one,
get a water tower out of it.
And a really great water tower where apparently Yakko, Wacko, and Dot are living. So kudos to anybody who understands that reference. So look, I disagree with you, Rob, that the movie theaters their days are numbered. I'm sorry. Like, I've literally been hearing that song and dance since I was a child. When TV came around and households got TVs, they said movie theaters are done. When the VHS was created, they said movie theaters are done. When DVDs came out, they said, oh, now you can play movies right on your computer. Movie theaters are done. When streaming came out, they said movie theaters are done. Now, yeah, we've been hit with a pandemic and a strike and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people believe, I don't know how optimistic I am about it, but a lot of people believe that 2026 is going to be a very big year. And we'll see how that goes. Now, look, the second thing I want to kind of point out too is this. And I've seen this all over the place, and it makes no sense to me. I see a lot of people, even in our live chat, saying, yeah, but do you actually trust Ted Sarandos? Do you actually believe he said that? I don't know that he's going to stick to his word. Here's why I trust it. You know why I trust it? Because of greed. I always trust greed, man. I always trust other people's greed. If greed dictates a motivation for somebody else, I trust them to follow that. I 100% trust them to follow that. The reason Ted Sarandos is saying all these things is because it's in his best interests. Everything he's saying is in his best interests.
Yep.
He's greedy. You don't think Ted Sarandos is greedy? You best believe Ted Sarandos is greedy. And the reason he's saying that, we want to make these billions of dollars that's being generated in the theaters. That's in his best interests. We want to not only conquer all of streaming, we want to be the kings of theatrical. That's in his best greedy interests. The reason I believe Ted Sarandos is because he's a greedy son of a bitch, and all of this feeds his greed. So you're damn right I believe him. If he was coming out here and saying things like, we want to buy Warner Brothers because we want to turn it into a doggy park where people can bring their pets and sing songs and everybody can roast marshmallows, I wouldn't believe him for a second, because that's not in his best interests. But when a movie executive, same is true of a politician. If you got a movie executive or a politician, whatever, and they start telling you things and you realize the things they're telling me are actually totally serve their own greed and their own best interests, you can probably believe it. And that's why I believe, because there is no other rational motivation for why would Ted Sarandos and Netflix even want to get involved in this whole mess? Because they're greedy, and this feeds their personal motivations. And so when people ask me, well, why do you believe Ted Sarandos? Because everything he's saying is 100% believable to a greedy movie executive, and that's why I trust it. I don't know, Rob, what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're probably right. And look, a good businessman recognizes how to do good business. He's not Gordon Gekko, who wants to wreck a company because it's wreckable. You know, he's trying to build an entertainment brand that's going to survive for another 100 years.
And make him lots of money doing it.
And make him lots of money doing it. And the thing is, you know what? Warner Brothers movies are better than Netflix movies. And
yes,
he knows that. And he knows that. And it's like they have relationships with filmmakers we can only dream to. I mean, eventually, you know, people, is everybody going to come over to Netflix to make movies? Eventually, probably. But, you know, Warner Brothers is still making prestige titles, and they're making movies that people are going to see. And I think it makes sense that they do this because it works. They get access to filmmakers that are great. The filmmakers don't have to worry about, oh, you're just making a movie for streaming. You know, they don't have to worry about trying to, obviously, they were not keen into jumping into theatrical themselves. Now that problem is solved. So no one's going to get mad. Maybe we can get Christopher Nolan back. You never know. If who knows? Because we got a theatrical arm now. And I think it's smart. I think it's really smart what he's doing. And they're getting other things. Again, what Warner Archive has done with Warner Brothers' rich legacy of films over the last 100 years with George Feltenstein at the head. He's at Warner Brothers already. They're restoring some great movies. Netflix could have their own. They could just benefit for all the work that Warner Archive has done over the years. And they've got access to all of that now. It's all content that's not on their streaming service that they could exploit, that gives people a whole new area of Netflix to go enjoy. And it's amazing. All the TV shows, I was just reading an article. I didn't know anything about this, but I own it because Warner Archive sent it to me. There was this Western TV show called Cheyenne that was made in the 50s that Warner just spent a lot of money restoring. And it was from the 50s. Never even heard of it. But they sent me the beautiful box set, and it's a precursor to the kind of TV that we get now. It was one of the first hour-long dramas. And I'm like, this sounds awesome. I just read a long article about it. Even though I have it, I knew nothing about it. I hadn't cracked it even open. Netflix is going to get that whole show. And it's like 8 seasons long. And even though it's a 50s Western, it sounds pretty dope. And suddenly Netflix, they have access to the whole thing. And they'll put it up and get it. And that's just one thing of the hundreds, if not thousands of things in the Warner Brothers library. So it's great. It's great.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? In case it seemed nebulous before, Netflix is now coming out and saying, listen, just to be clear, in case you didn't pick up what we were dropping down, we want to put these movies continued in the industry standard 45-day theatrical window like everybody else does. That's because it's going to make us money. And we want to be the champions of the box office. We want to win the box office. What do you guys take away from that? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, it's time for us to move on to the most important part of our show, which is, of course, taking your live comments and questions. Now, we did turn off our super chats like maybe 45 minutes ago because they got all filled up. But we're also going to bid good afternoon to writer, director, producer Robert Meyer Burnett. Great job as always, man. I'll see you back on Monday.
John, what a week we had. I look forward to the next week, and I'm off to see the Bone Temple. Yeah.
Go enjoy, man. We'll talk to you later. All right, guys, with that all down, let's get over to your live questions that you guys have been sending in during the show here, shall we? Jonathan, what do we got up first? Sure. Well, I mean, it all depends on if the movies were good. That's it. I mean, listen, they needed to move on from Kang because they botched it. But that being said, if they came out and made like an Oscar caliber movie out of it with Kang Dynasty or whatever, then sure, it would still be around. Sure, it would work. So wait a second. Am I muted? Oh, Jonathan's muted.
They didn't want to hear my voice anyway, but I fixed it.
You guys read the question. So yeah, if the movies were great off the scale, then yes, Marvel would still be around. If they were terrible, they'd be in a rough place. But no different than if Doomsday sucks, and if Secret War sucks, they're going to be in a pretty rough place too. So there's that. All right, what's next?
Well, we got Bobby Jackson, who says I think we can kind of maybe answer this. From what you know of Doomsday, do you know why the chair in Latveria was empty in Fantastic Four? Remember that scene where they were in the UN and it's
yeah, that's right. In Fantastic Four, there's a scene where they don't call it the UN, but it's their version of the UN. And as the camera goes across the delegates, there's an empty seat at the Latveria. I can tell you this. I will say this. It is absolutely addressed why that chair is empty in Doomsday. Now, it's not like whatever the date was. It's not like, oh, that one day on October 5th, 1964, why that one day were you? No. But in general, it is 100% addressed why Victor Von Doom was not there at the UN in his Latveria seat. It is 100% addressed. I won't say how, why, the context of which, or any of that, but yes, it is relevant. It is important, and it ties into the overall thing. So yes, it does get addressed why he's not in that seat in Fantastic Four.
And congratulations to Bobby for getting a question that made it through about Doomsday.
Hey, you know what? That's a great question, because it's a question that I could answer that doesn't really reveal anything, but I can say yes, that gets addressed. All right.
Bobby's back and says, do you think Terry Matalas would be a good fit for a Star Wars project? I mean, yes, I think so.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. My kind of feelings on would this be a good filmmaker or showrunner or whatever to do something, to do X, changed a lot. And you guys have heard me say this before. That day that we had Kevin Feige in, and Kevin Feige came in, sat down with us, and, you know, I asked him a question about, like, why James Gunn to do a Guardians of the Galaxy. He's never done something like that on that level. And Kevin Feige said to me, he said, because a good storyteller is a good storyteller. And that kind of changed my thing of this. So, like, really the only question is would Terry Matalas be good for Star Wars? The real question is Terry Matalas a good storyteller? Well, just by watching Picard season 3, the answer to that's yes. And I really look forward to see what he does with Vision Quest. So he's a good storyteller. So yeah, I could see him doing a Star Wars project. I don't think he will, but I could see him doing one. All right, what's next?
All right, we got The Viewpoint, who says, what do you think is the best, not personal favorite trilogy of all time? I think Lord of the Rings, still Star Wars for you?
I've said this before, I'll say it again. As I've gotten older and watched movies for longer, I used to believe, like everybody else, that there's a difference between the best movies and your favorite movies. I don't believe there's a distinction anymore. I really don't. I think if something is your favorite, then for you, that's the best. Movies are art, and art is subjective, and movies are meant to make us feel things. They succeed if they make us feel. They're experiential events. And if watching Star Wars for you gives you that best experience to the point that it's your favorite, then I got news for you. To say something else is to you the best is not honest. To me, Star Wars is still it. I mean, it delivers the biggest, best, most incredible experience for me, and therefore it's my favorite. Therefore, I think it's the best. I do not, and I know everybody disagrees with me, and that's fine. It's lonely being right. The bottom line is, because it's art and it's subjective, if something is your favorite, then to you, that's the best. And that's the way I see it. So I make no distinction. And yes, for me, it's still Star Wars. All right, what's next?
We got Orange Hand, who says some Star Wars fans think the mall fight in Phantom Menace is over choreographed. Do you agree or disagree? Thoughts on the choreography of lightsaber fights overall?
Disagree. I don't think that one is over choreographed. No. They did get a little bit like that as you move further into the prequels, but I think that Maul, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon fight was awesome. I don't think that one was over choreographed. That's my opinion. All right, what's next?
Connor says, have you ever seen the Ryan Reynolds film Waiting? I just did for the first time, and all I could think of is I want someone to edit Deadpool into Ryan's role in that film. It definitely translates his humor. I mean, yes, there's that. I encourage everybody to go back and try to find episodes of, I think I might be getting one of the two or the words wrong, but the title of the show is basically Two Guys, a Girl in a Pizza Shop, something along those lines. If you want to see some young, fresh Ryan Reynolds, but the funny thing is, if you go back and watch that, you can actually see those things that makes him great already there, but he clearly develops that a lot. But if you want to see something funny, go and watch that. Yeah, I think.
All right, what's next?
I think my intro to him was Van Wilder.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
John Zena says Spielberg and Kennedy, only one is irreplaceable.
So what?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be some kind of sharp, quick wit retort of Kathleen Kennedy? I mean, okay. What, Steven Spielberg is the greatest of all time. Anyway, but he doesn't make his movies without Kathleen Kennedy. Steven Spielberg said himself that Kathleen Kennedy got him through making most of the movies that he's made. I mean, sure, like if only one is irreplaceable, then it's Steven Spielberg. But if that's meant to be some kind of diss on Kathleen Kennedy, you suck at it. You got to get better. All right, what's next?
Brady says Damon and Affleck were on Joe Rogan, and they said a $25 million movie has to make 100 to break even. That's the math, and today most movies can't even break even. That's why we chose Netflix for RIP. 25 million.
No, that he's wrong. Unless a part of his premise is that you need to spend a minimum of $50 million marketing. If part of your premise, and I don't agree with that either, but part of your premise is if you're going to put a movie in theaters today, you got to spend at least $50 million. Then yeah, 50 million plus the 25 million, you got to multiply that. Your break-even point becomes 1.5. You're getting close to that $100 million mark. Yeah, that would make sense. But if you're making a $25 million movie and you spend 15 million on marketing, well, then you got to make 60 million to break even, because you got to multiply that by 1.5. But it is becoming a trend that to make your movie succeed, you do have to do more and more marketing. And if, again, what his underlying conceit is that you got to spend so much on the marketing of these things that to break even, you got to get close to 100 million, then I see where he's coming from. But if you concede that you only need to spend about 20 million, then he's not correct. He's not right. All right, what's next?
Yanni says, how excited should we be knowing Doomsday?
Extremely excited. Extremely excited. I have moved from slight pessimism to extreme excitement. All right, what's next?
I'm not sure if he's talking box office or quality, but Yanni then says, if Doomsday nails it, can it top Infinity War?
Whenever you ask a question that has the word can in it, it's almost always yes. So the answer is yes, it can. I'm not saying it will, but it can.
And then we got Vikas, who says, has the Doomsday storyline won you over the multiverse concept? Do you think it'll win over others? Is the story faithful to Secret Wars, the comic book?
Nothing Marvel ever does is 100% faithful to comic book. Just as in Civil War, there are elements of Civil War that they absolutely bring into the Civil War movie, but it's still a very different thing. There are elements of Ultron that they bring into Age of Ultron, but it's still a different movie. There are elements that they brought, at least over at Fox, Days of Future Past. There are definitely elements they brought into the Days of Future Past movie. It's different. There are absolutely elements. Now remember, I don't know anything about Secret Wars, the movie. We're talking about Doomsday. This isn't Secret Wars. But when we get to Secret Wars, my anticipation will be that they follow that pattern, that there are going to be definite, recognizable elements that they bring in, but it'll also be its own thing. So that's my guess. All right, what's next?
Okay, Matan says, I hope that Lucasfilm will be able to get Vince Gilligan on Star Wars in the foreseeable future. Disney needs to show that they're still willing to do Star Wars prestige TV post Andor.
I don't know that after watching Pluribus, I don't know that I'd want Vince Gilligan on a Star Wars thing. It would take a five 1-hour episodes just for C-3PO to get an oil job.
That's a heck of an oil job.
Yeah, that's a hell of an oil job. Or is that something special you ask for?
Yeah. Can I get a happy oil job?
The oil job, please. Yeah, I'm just gonna say I disagree. After what, like, Pluribus was excruciating to watch. It's such a great story, such great characters, such a great premise, just told in an agonizingly, insufferably slow pace that I just couldn't take it. So I wouldn't want to see that in Star Wars. All right, what's next?
Dicka says Dune Part 3 versus the Odyssey. Who makes more at the box office? Oh, Dune versus
probably the Odyssey, because I think the Odyssey is a potential billion-dollar film. And I've said before the first Dune movie ever came out, it's such high concept sci-fi that it's never going to be a billion-dollar franchise. It doesn't need to be, but it never will be. So yeah, but Odyssey I think can be a billion-dollar film. So I'll say Odyssey. I'm not saying the Odyssey will be better, but I think it has a better chance of being a billion-dollar film than Dune 3. All right, what's next?
Pasha says, is Boston on your list of movie meetups?
Yes, I definitely want to hit Boston. 100% I want us to. Maybe even at the, Tom Brady's old stomping grounds. Maybe we can meet somewhere close to Gillette Stadium. All right, what's next?
All right. It's Mario says, hey, John, did you know the famous King Kong scene from Training Day was completely improvised? Denzel was so in character, he just went off script, and I'm going to hit the button.
King Kong ain't got shit
I
on
think
me.
I think I've heard that before, because that sounds familiar. Have you heard that before, Jonathan? I think I've heard that before.
That is a heck of an improvise, and I'm glad no one broke
Yeah.
character to ruin it.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me. Yeah, it's such a great movie. All right, what's next?
We got Vikas, who says, "Hey guys, do you watch the THR roundtables? Do they invite the best talent any given year, or is it just big names, or is it a mix?" I think it's a mix of two. It's people that are fitting for the show at that time.
Yeah, it's people who are hot right now, and if
Yeah.
they can get some legends. And by the way, not everybody accepts the invitation. You know, everybody's busy. By the way, do you have pigeons in your living room?
Doves.
I hear doves. Okay, yeah, I can hear them. I'm like, what does that sound? Anyway, yeah. So I'm sure not everybody accepts the invitation, and I think they try to mix between who's the big hot name right now or has a big project right now with some bigger names as well. So that's probably how they mix it, I would guess.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
And I think you can hear it because you're before the filter. I don't think the audience can hear it.
Yeah, that's probably why I can hear it. Yeah.
The Batman says, "Hey, John, the scene in Highlander 2, when dude gets on his knees and yells, 'Ramirez,' and Sean Connery comes out of nowhere is so painful to watch."
That is never, that was the moment. That was the moment to me. Like, I wasn't really, because you understand, the first Highlander is one of my favorite movies of all time. And in watching the second one, like, I wasn't really enjoying it up to this point anyway, but it was when it got to the point where Connor just drops down, "Ramirez, I need you." And that just brought Ramirez back from the dead. Just like that. That's all he ever had to do. I'm like, as a kid, I'm watching this. I'm like, what the actual fuck is going on? And it was like, that was the moment very early in the film that I realized, oh, this isn't good. Oh God, that was so bad. All right, what's next?
Daniel says the Bone Temple is a masterpiece. I hope you see it.
Oh yeah, if I wasn't on the road, because Ann and I mean, we're on the road. We're in the van. We're in Denver to see the football game. If I wasn't on the road, I absolutely would have gone to see it already. Like, again, I wasn't a big fan of 28 Years Later. I wish I was. I was excited about it. It's not the worst. There are some things about it that I liked, but overall I was kind of disappointed with it. But I'm hearing nothing but spectacular things about this second one. Everybody's saying Nia DaCosta, who was the director of Marvels, just crushed it. And everybody's saying it's amazing. So I will get around to seeing it. And I would have seen it already if we weren't on the road. All right, what's next?
Mike's Movie Madness says, "I know it's X actor, X role, but I saw someone comment on the Ryan Hurst casting. Charlie Hunnam as Balder. Jackson will keep beating the crap out of each other for a whole season. Yes, please."
Listen, it is X actor and X role, but that's a good fit. I mean, that's one of the guys. You take away the novelty of a Sons of Anarchy reunion. Okay, even take that out. That's a good pick. That's a good pick. I like it. I mean, hell, you could even, what's the guy's name from West Wing? Schiff? What's his first name? The guy from West Wing. But anyway, he plays Odin in the games. It'd be pretty cool to see him come back to see him. And they modeled Odin after his appearance and everything. It'd be pretty cool to see them bring Richard Schiff.
Yeah.
Richard Schiff. Yeah. Thank you to Ron H in the live chat who put that in first. Be cool for that. But yeah, I'd be down for Charlie Hunnam in there. All right, what's next?
We got Dion. I know you don't do X person, X project, but hear me out. A Ryan Johnson written and directed Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I mean, again, a good storyteller. Ryan Johnson is a masterful storyteller, and it keeps him in that kind of mystery whodunit kind of motif that we already know he does well. So yeah, I'd be down for it 100%.
Hey, what if Downey Jr. comes back for another one and he writes and directs a Sherlock Holmes?
You know, I still would like to see why am I freezing on the name of Guy Ritchie? Yeah. I would still like to see Guy Ritchie do it, but at this point I'll take somebody else doing it. Like, just get it done. You know, RDJ continues to say that they're going to do one someday. So TikTok, gentlemen, let's get to it. I would love to see another Sherlock Holmes with him in it. All right, what's next?
Rhino says Miles Brown is Miles Morales. I mean, I think he was on Blackish, and can't remember what else he was on.
Forget it. Just forget it. Kevin Feige's already said that he's been told hands off Miles Morales. There's not going to be a Miles Morales, not live action.
It's their one successful thing at Sony.
Yeah, at least not for a while. Sony has, and again, this is Kevin Feige explicitly said, when it comes to Miles Morales, I've been told to keep my hands off. He can't do anything with it, so there's no point in even thinking about it. Now, it's not to say that can't change in several years, but years and years from now it can change, but don't expect anything like that anytime soon. All right, what's next?
Storm Dragon watched Anaconda and liked it. Still prefer the OG. 90s version had better focus, pacing, and kitsch value. Would like a sequel regardless. I mean, one was more of a slasher and one's a comedy, but
yeah, and I don't know if the box office is gonna support one. That's the unfortunate thing.
You did see it, right? The comedy.
Finally did. You know what? I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was great. It was certainly not as good as I was hoping it would be.
The trailer seemed good, but
oh God, I love the trailers. Yeah. I thought the trailers were great. And I love Paul Rudd and Jack Black and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, but the box office just didn't support it. So all right, what's next?
Okay, we got Keegan. Hey John, does Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy's role within Disney have the same level of creative control over Marvel, Star Wars, respectively?
Yes, they're both the head of their respective studio.
Mm-hmm.
And they have all the responsibilities and freedom to carry out those responsibilities as each other, both under, the supervision of Alan Bergman, who's the head of all Disney studios. And then, of course, that under Bob Iger, at least for the time being. But yes, they enjoy that same level of creative control. All right, what's next?
Jay says, love everything y'all do. Can't wait for an ATL Atlanta movie meetup.
I'll tell you what, man, I am dying to get to Atlanta. I really am. We did an event in Atlanta back when I was at AMC, and I had the AMC crew with me, and we did a special event at an AMC theater in Atlanta, and it was one of my favorite events that we've ever done. And ever since then, I've been dying to go back. So once the weather starts to warm up a little bit more, we will be planning our Atlanta meetup. All right, what's next?
All right, this is a $20 super chat from AS. I'm not quite sure what it's referring to, but it just says Mind Swap. Was that something?
Sure.
Did you bring that up about something? I don't know.
I don't recall, but okay. Yeah. But regardless, thank you so much for supporting us on that level, AS. I appreciate that very much. All right, what's next?
We haven't heard from Twilight Boy in a long time.
Oh, Twilight Boy.
Says, you've got to see Bone Temple. My friend who hasn't liked any of the 28 movies went and loved it. The most fun I've had in a theater in a while.
That's what everybody's saying, man.
That's
everybody's
crazy.
Saying this thing kills it, which is, look, that shows how drastic things can change when you change directors. Because, again, I really thought 28 Years Later was a bit of a letdown considering all the hype I had going into it. But everybody is raving about Bone Temple, so sign me up. I'll get there as soon as I get home. I'll go to see it. All right, what's next?
We got Brandon Salad, who says, hey crew, finally got around to watching the original Fox X-Men films for the first time. Just finished First Class and loved X2.
Yeah, listen, for me, X2 for a long time was this is the best comic book movie ever made. And now that stopped after a while, but for a while, to me, that was the best comic book movie ever made. I loved X2. X2 and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, to me, were like the standard bearers for how good comic book movies could be for a long time. Listen, we can say all we want about X-Men 3 or about X-Men Origins Wolverine or things like that. I love the Fox X-Men era. I really did. Now, yeah, it came off the rails a little bit with Apocalypse and with the Phoenix film. Yeah, it did, for sure. But man, X-Men 2, I love those movies, man. I love that era. All right, what's next?
Twilight Boy says, went and loved it. Sorry, weird typo. That's okay.
No problem. Thanks for correcting it.
Yeah. Vika says, Endgame hype was next level. Will Doomsday match it? Will Secret War supersede it? Also, please do more open mics. Thanks.
Listen, they could, but I don't think Doomsday will. Secret Wars will have to see. Whether Secret Wars will all depend on how good Doomsday is. Now, listen, it has the potential to be mind-blowing. It all comes down to execution. And I don't know how well they've executed because I haven't seen a single frame of it. But we'll see. All right, what's next?
Jai says, getting ready for Shrinking Season 3, resubscribe to Apple TV, but something I've only just realized about Apple TV, no legacy content in their library.
Yeah, they don't go out and license other people's stuff to put on their service. Like
Right.
every Apple TV Plus thing is an Apple TV Plus show.
Yeah.
And that's why we've always talked about when Apple TV Plus, they take the quality approach as opposed to the quantity game. And it's working for them. I love Apple TV stuff, man. And I cannot wait for Shrinking Season 3. You know how much I love Shrinking. I think it's one of, if not the best thing on TV right now.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait to see Season 3.
They're probably the closest competitor to HBO in quality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Super Nintendo says, thanks for all you do. Your show takes my mind off the craziness of the world.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And listen, doing the show helps take my mind off the depressing state of the world right now. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, man. All right, what's next?
Vikas, what do you hope for the MCU post Secret Wars as their big storyline? I wish they do an Age of Apocalypse and Phoenix Saga. I mean, those were just recently done.
Yeah, no, and not at all. No way you should do that. I mean, they didn't do Age of Apocalypse. They had Apocalypse, the character. But Age of Apocalypse is not something you can't do. Age of Apocalypse until you have a firmly established cinematic universe. Then Age of Apocalypse has depth and meaning. As far as that, I don't really care. I really don't care. As long as whatever storylines they choose, whatever new direction they decide to go, as long as you do it well, that's all I care about. Like, you can get the most beloved story arc of all time in the comic books and have it not turn out well. So and besides, it's hard for me to even think about what should they do after Secret Wars when we don't even know what's going to happen in Secret Wars or where the MCU will be by the end of Secret Wars. So I'm just going to say, honestly, I have no preference, except you can't do Phoenix again, not now.
Right.
And you can't do Age of Apocalypse until you've already been running X-Men films for at least 5 years. So I'm just going to say, I don't care what storyline they do as long as they do it well, because winning cures everything. All right, what's next?
With the Apocalypse factor, don't you end up having a bit of the Kang storyline mixed in there? Sorry, I was Franklin Richards, right? With Apocalypse, his origins.
Well, no, not even there. Like Age of Apocalypse, the more MacGuffin character is Legion. Legion's the one who, the villainous character Legion, who is Charles Xavier's son. Legion is the character who inadvertently kicks off the events of Age of Apocalypse. Now, you could substitute that in for Franklin Richards if you wanted to. You could substitute him in for another character, but again, it's not something you can really do until your cinematic universe has at least been running for about 5 years.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Cam Play says, what do we know about Pirate 6? Just rewatch them.
I don't think there is a Pirate 6.
I've heard things batted around about conversations, but nothing concrete.
Yeah, there are talks about maybe doing this, that, and the other thing. Some people are out there pretending like Johnny Depp's going to come back. Disney does not want to work with Johnny Depp. And listen, that had nothing to do with the lawsuits between him and his ex-wife. Like, Disney, prior to all that legal nonsense and all that TMZ stuff, Disney was just over working with Johnny Depp. And because of how he conducts himself, showing up to set certain ways, not promoting the films, they had just pretty much gotten over working John. I don't think you're going to see, and I say this as somebody who's a big fan of Johnny Depp's career, but I don't think you're ever going to see Disney wanting to get into business with him again. Again, anything can happen. Maybe like Disney's going to get a new CEO in the coming year, and maybe the new CEO will have a different mind frame than Bob Iger, but as of things right now, don't ever expect to see a Pirate 6 with Johnny Depp. All right, what's next?
Christopher says Lucasfilm wants to make more post Episode 9 projects. I think Starfighter will test how much interest there is in post Episode 9 era from audiences.
No, it won't. It won't. It'll test out whether they like good movies or not. If Starfighter is great, then people will be interested in that and people will like it. If Starfighter is bad, it doesn't mean, oh, they didn't want post episode 9. No, it just meant they didn't like the movie.
Mhm.
So I don't think the success or failure of Starfighter tells us anything at all about whether the audiences have an appetite for post episode 9 content or not. I don't think that tells us anything about that. It just tells us whether they liked a good movie or not. If it is good, I mean, it might be crap. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
We got, where are we? Igurumi. Hi, John. Without seeing the film and judging by the story only, where would you rank Doomsday among the Avengers movies?
I can't, because the other Avengers movies, I have the full fleshed out, actually executed and manifested movies in my head.
Right.
And Doomsday, I just have concept.
Mhm.
It's just concept. I can't possibly compare them. It's all comes down to how they're executed. Right now, it's an idea. Until we see it on the screen and we see how it actually plays out. I mean, look, I think it has the potential to be the greatest Avengers movie they've ever made. But you're also naive if you don't understand that everything at this point also has the potential to be the worst, depending on how it's executed. So I can't possibly rank them you can't rank actual movies with concepts of movies. And so I can't rank them at that point. All right, what's next?
This reminded me of we have concepts of plans.
Yeah.
Mate says, what do you expect from the Mall series?
I have no interest in it. I have zero interest in it. So I'm probably not even going to watch it.
Vika,
all right, what's next?
Vika says, Marvel quality will return in Avengers Doomsday. Cross his fingers.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. As much as I've moaned and cried and complained about how Marvel hasn't been what it was since, Endgame, the reality is they've had some things of really, really good quality. They just had a bunch that also wasn't. Guardians 3 was fantastic. Shang-Chi was fantastic. Ms. Marvel is wonderful. WandaVision was great. So in the midst of all the not so good stuff they've done, and they've done a lot of not so good stuff, they've had some quality along the way as well. Let's not forget that too. All right, what's next?
We got our final two here. First off, there's some support for Dean Talks Movies. And then,
thank you, Dean Talks Movies.
Then we got a $20 super chat from Mr. I. Says,
thank you for supporting us on that level, man.
Just got back from having reconstructive foot surgery. 3 to 4 weeks weight bearing. That is tough. Thanks for being a great host and source of movie and fandom news. Thanks to you, Jonathan. Herculean task of keeping John on point. More John on Rob on point. My job is easy.
I don't do that very well either. No, listen, man, get well soon. I know being late. I mean, earlier this year, I don't know if I talked about it on the show. I was sitting on my couch and I reached for something on the coffee table and my back just went, fuck you. And like for like a week, I could barely walk. Like there were sometimes I'd lay down in bed. It's like, that's it. I'm here now. I can't get up. And it sucks being laid up. So quickest of recoveries to you for that, man. I hope you get well soon.
All right.
All right. What's next?
Final one from Brandon. This is interesting. Met Ian McKellen last weekend at the stage door of a live show in London.
Nice.
Yeah. Super nice guy. He was very excited for Doomsday. He's my favorite Magneto.
I mean, yeah, he's my favorite Magneto too. And that takes nothing away from Michael Fassbender's Magneto, who he does a great job with it. But yeah, Ian McKellen's a standard bearer. You know what? There's not many guys in the business that I haven't met that I would want to meet. He's one of them, man. I would love to meet him. Oh God, if I could be given a half hour to sit down and just a half hour, I won't be greedy and ask for a whole day, but like a half hour to sit down and talk to him about the industry and about his career. And oh my God, that would be a dream. Hey, was that the last one?
That was it. Yeah.
All right, guys. And that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making our little show part of your day. Boy, we turned them off just at the right moment. It's been 2 hours exactly.
Yep.
So thanks so much for joining us, guys. Don't forget to come on back and join us again on Monday for Monday's show. We'll be on the road for the next couple of days, so probably no open mics this weekend, but we will see you back in the studio on Monday. Big thanks, of course, to Robert Meyer Burnett, our technical producer, Jonathan Voico.
See you guys later.
And of course, deepest appreciation to all you guys. We know you could be doing other better things with your time, but you chose to hang out with us today, and we are so appreciative of that. Thank you so much for that, guys. Go out and enjoy things that you love this weekend, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends,